Can't sleep? Here are some techniques that actually work. Hello and welcome to another edition of Shine, where our job is to make your life a little easier. Let's talk about sleep. We all need it. Sometimes we have a really hard time getting it. Let's go straight to the iPad. Today's article comes from the Wall Street Journal. It's entitled, "Can't Sleep? Here are some surprising strategies that actually work." And this article that we're reviewing is by Elizabeth Bernstein. And she asks, how are you sleeping? How are you sleeping? I'm sure each of us has a different answer. Let's find out. Okay. After 1 year of a pandemic and a lot of disturbed slumber, it's clear that our usual sleep strategies may not be working. Scientists say that many things we do to chase sleep are actually hurting us. They're not helping, they're hurting. And recommend a counterintuitive approach. Stay in bed less time, not more. I've been battling insomnia lately. I know I'm not alone. Approximately 40% of the population has had sleep problems during the pandemic, according to meta-analysis of 44 studies in 13 countries. So this sleep problem is obviously all over the planet. The pandemic has been a source of stress and worry. Our daily routines have been disrupted, affecting our circadian rhythms. And isolation has led to mental health problems, depression, and anxiety. Insomnia can be driven by the things we do to try to solve it. So we may think we're solving our sleep problems, but we're causing it to be worse. And we must remember that the brains of people with insomnia act differently than the brains of people who are sleeping well. Have you ever been lying in your bed, especially if you have to go to work the next day, and you have a clock right next to you on the night table, and you look over at that clock and you see the hour keep getting later and later and you're still awake? And then you start calculating, well, how many hours left could I possibly sleep when I know I have to wake up at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m.? And as the clock ticks later and later, you're calculating less and less sleep. That gives you more anxiety, and that makes it harder for you to sleep. It's a terrible cycle. It's a terrible feeling that I'm sure you all have experienced at one time or the other. So what do we do about this? Let's go back to the iPad. If you spend a lot of time in bed, worried and frustrated and miserable, just looking at your clock, if you spend a lot of time in this pattern, your brain learns that your bedtime is a place to do all of these things but sleep. So you're training yourself not to sleep if you're lying in bed trying to sleep. This is very interesting. So let's skip down to the treatment, because that's what we really need. And I have to say that sometimes getting out of bed and getting some water, drinking a little bit of water, getting yourself rehydrated, that helps. So sometimes it's best to get up, maybe use the bathroom, get some water, and then get back into bed. Okay. The treatment that they were using is typically 6 to 8 sessions with a therapist. Okay. Now, what should we do? We should avoid going to bed unless we're sleepy. Number one. And this author says, I've learned that the hard way, that being bone weary, being exhausted, is not the same thing as sleepy. And we shouldn't stay in bed unless we're asleep. If we're having trouble falling asleep, we should go to another room, keep the lights low, and do something pleasant, but not too absorbing. Read a book, do a crossword, listen to music. Maybe you need to get out of your bed for a little while. Move to another room, keep the lights low, read something, maybe even read something boring. something that you think will make you sleepy. Concentrate on that, and soon you will feel so tired, then walk back to your bed and drift off to sleep. Okay, regulation. Let's wake up at the same time every day, even on the weekends. Not all of us can do this, but it obviously helps to regulate your circadian rhythm and keeps you from sleeping too late, which would harm our ability to sleep the following night. To figure out when to go to bed, calculate the amount of time you are actually asleep during the night. Then subtract that from the time you need to wake up. That's your bedtime for now. Don't give yourself less than 6 hours in bed. As your sleep gets back on track, start lengthening your time slowly by 15-minute intervals to try to increase your sleep over time. Okay, let's go down to what really helped this person get their sleep. Let's look at an example. So when I got into bed one recent night, I opened my sleep app and clicked on the link that said, "Help me get to sleep now." A recording of a man's voice told me to find a mark on the ceiling to focus on. Your goal is to stay awake. Don't let your eyes close. Sounds like reverse psychology here. He was deploying a technique therapists call paradoxical intention in an attempt to distract me from focusing on trying to fall asleep. He said, stay focused on that spot. So he's teaching the person not to just try to fall asleep, but to do something else. Focus on this spot on the ceiling. Just look at it. That's all you have to do. So you're looking at the spot on the ceiling. Then he told me to notice how my eyelids were getting heavier. He acknowledged that it would probably feel a relief to close them, but we must resist. Resist. Resist the temptation to close your eyes, even as they feel heavier and heavier. Remember, your goal is to remain awake. I don't know what he said next because I was asleep. Obviously, it worked. When you're not trying to fall asleep, it's much easier to fall asleep. Let's look at some more examples here. So, don't chase sleep. Don't go to bed early. Don't sleep late. Don't nap. You'll diminish your sleep. Okay? Don't go to bed until you're sleepy. Learn the difference between tiredness and sleepiness. Sleepiness is when your eyes are drooping. Your eyes are drooping. And limit your time in bed to the amount of time you're sleeping, plus an hour. Don't stay in bed unless you're asleep. Tossing and turning in bed only reinforces your brain's association between wakefulness and negative emotions and the bed. Reestablish daily routines. Have a morning routine. Eat meals at the same time. Exercise at the same time, which all helps you stick to your natural circadian rhythm, which is very important. Have a rhythm. Your body will get used to that rhythm, and then it'll be easier to fall asleep. If you've had this pattern, your body can fit into the pattern, and it makes it easier. Stop catastrophizing. Quit telling yourself you won't be able to sleep or to function the next day, and ask yourself if these thoughts are really true. Replace them with positive thoughts. A bad night of sleep is not the end of the world. Don't sit there staring at your clock saying, oh, now I can only get 3 hours of sleep. Now I can only get 2.5 hours of sleep. Now it's only 2 hours of sleep. No, it's okay. Maybe you miss out on a night of sleep. It's not the end of the world. Don't blow it up into more than it is. And keep a worry journal. If you're worried about things, write them down. And then forget about it. Because when worry comes out at night, you can tell yourself you've already documented it, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And the biggest thing is practice gratitude. If you find yourself starting to ruminate in bed, think about the things you're grateful for. Savor the moments of the day. Be glad that you were able to do things. I'm glad that I was able to do this podcast. I'm glad that you were able to watch it, and just be grateful for what you have. Write down some of the things you're worried about. Relax. Don't think about sleeping. Read. Stare at that crack in the wall, and soon you will be in La La Land. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Shine 365. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Shine 365.